Welcome back, Wolfpack. Vrolas here. We're taking a trip from Kalos to Hoenn, and we're bringing Heliolisk with us. Now let's see what Heliolisk gets for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire move tutors. We have Dragon Pulse and Signal Beam. Now these aren't going to be insane staples by any means, but they are going to improve your potential coverage. That, if you want to be ready against dark type Pokemon, or you just want to hit dragons a little harder, it can work out really well. And since you are an electric type Pokemon, your main form of stab is resisted by dragons, so it is something to somewhat consider if you really need to. Electroweb. Now Electroweb is just good in every way. It makes you more supportive in doubles by giving that chance to lower your opponent's speed and then capitalizing on it. Now Electroweb isn't as strong as Icy Wind because Icy Wind can affect ground type Pokemon, but still it is something that works out pretty well. And then we also get Hyper Voice. That just doesn't sound right because Heliolisk is a normal type Pokemon. It should already have Hyper Voice, right? Well, let's go to Cerebi, and I'm just going to hit Control F. We're going to look for Hyper. Alright. And there's Hyper Beam. What about Hyper Voice? Okay, cool, there's Hyper Voice. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire move tutor attacks. But it doesn't get as an egg move? Or a pre-evolution move? That doesn't make any sense, but at least Heliolisk does have it now. I don't know what Game Freak was thinking by not giving a stab special move to a special attacker, but we have it now, so it's a buff in every way. However, Heliolisk is a very tricky Pokemon to use in singles, that it has just ever so slightly not enough speed and ever so slightly not enough special attack. That even if you were running a Modest on this, that 109 special attack, even with a Life Orb, doesn't really score a lot of neutral KOs, that you're going to have to be a coverage sweeper to get the most out of it. And looking at speed, 109 base speed, well that means you just flat out get outsped by 110 base speed Pokemon. Some slower Scarf Pokemon do get an edge on you, and it's just not what you need when you're such a frail Pokemon. 62 base hit points is going to make it kind of difficult, but then it does have the Solar Power ability. Sunny Day is active, you get 50% boost to your special attack, but you lose an eighth of your hit points every turn. That makes it hard on Heliolisk. Heliolisk is going to be losing an eighth, plus a tenth, and if in singles you need to set it up, that means you need to have like a Heat Rock Pokemon, a Drought Pokemon, a Pokemon setting up Sunny Day. However, if you get all of that, then Heliolisk looks threatening, because if it gets that outspeed, Hyper Voice Thunderbolt, that's going to be a lot of damage. Surf gives you a lot of really good coverage potential. And then you have a couple of options, Volt Switch. You can use that just to chip in damage and get out really quick and try to outplay your opponent, or you can just carry other moves like Dark Pulse and Dragon Pulse, and if you hit super effective, that's going to really secure you a lot of KOs. So it can be worth it. As long as that sun is up, as long as you're getting outspeed, you have the potential of scoring 2-3 KOs. And you most likely have a chance of knocking yourself out with Life Orb and Solar Power, but the recoil isn't the worst thing as long as you're scoring KOs. So it's high risk, decent reward, I feel. Well, there is high reward to it, but not a ridiculous amount. Now, Heliolisk is really going to shine in double battles. Now, this does look the same, timid nature and all that, but Solar Power is a lot easier to get going in double battles. That if you have Heat, or some kind of Drought Pokemon, some kind of Sunny Day Pokemon, you can just kind of get that going, and then you can kind of do the same thing. I wouldn't recommend Surf. I would have Electroweb just as some kind of potential here, because Surf, since you're in Sun, it's going to be doing less damage, not really a point, and since most Drought Pokemon, well, every Drought Pokemon is going to be weak to water types, it's just not a good thing to carry. But other than that, you're going to be good to go in doubles, and then you can just go for the coverage, go for that boosted damage, and hope you don't get touched too much because you are still very vulnerable. Now, Heliolisk does get really interesting with dry skin, and that's another thing to look at, that Heliolisk works in various forms of weather. Sunny days, sandstorm, rain. It can be effective in all of them, and I think Heliolisk is going to want the rain the most, mostly because it's going to work with thunder. And also Surf is going to get a 50% boost to damage because that's how it works in rain. Now if we look at what Heliolisk can do, I was thinking kind of going with tanky disruption with the Electroweb and a lot of high damage threat. That you throw out an Electroweb, you try to survive the hit by just investing into your hit points, and now you have a lot of things that are threatening your opponent. Surf has a high amount of potential. If your Rain Dance Pokemon or your Rain Setter Pokemon is using Surf, Heliolisk is getting a ton of health back. Dry Skin is going to be giving it a quarter of its health back every time it gets hit by Surf, and then it's also going to be getting an eighth just for the rain. You pair this with another Dry Skin Pokemon or a Pokemon with Water Absorb, and then you're just double surfing, hyper sustaining all over the place, and you don't really have to worry unless you're getting hit super effective. Citrus Berry is going to add to that sustain, and then you can follow it up with a monstrous Thunder. Can't miss in rain, high amount of stab damage, oh that's going to be pretty good. Now you can also look at Parabolic Charge for extra sustain. Hyper Voice is also a really good option because it hits both foes, so if you really need to kind of pick off two low opponents, Hyper Voice is the way to go. And then we have Sandveil. Sandveil Heliolisk can be very hilarious / interesting. Sandveil, evasion is raised 1.25 times, immunity to Sandstorm, so pretty much you're going to be playing a kind of risk game that you're going to try to not get hit as much, but Heliolisk also gets Electrify. Changes the target's move to electric for that turn, which means if you have a ground type Pokemon that's trying to benefit from the sand, you just make it work, that you throw out the Electrify, you still have a 109 speed, fairly respectable speed, you throw out the Electrify, now they don't affect your ground type Pokemon, and you can kind of play around with that. So I was thinking you can have Focus Sash and set up Sandstorm for yourself, then have a Pokemon like Excadrill being supported by it. If you see Excadrill being threatened immediately by a water type move or a ground type move, you just throw out the Electrify, and then it gets hilarious from there. Or you can just have Hippowdon. Hippowdon is going to bring its own sand, which means you don't have to have Sandstorm, and I was thinking you could just run Bright Powder if you're directly running with Hippowdon. That way your opponents are going to have a very low chance of hitting you. 90% accuracy immediately, 25% more on the evasion, throwing out a speedy Electrify while Hippowdon's just trying to get its own damage out there, and it could just be a really interesting gimmick set. Heliolisk got just stronger in every way, that it was a buff on multiple levels just because it got the right moves that it needed. Unfortunately, its stats are still a bit iffy, so it's not going to be like a Pokemon suddenly played a lot, but I did want to bring some recognition to it. Heliolisk definitely deserves to be played just a little more at the very least, and it does have a lot of cool outplay potentials that it can make. So if you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a nice day.